Being lonely as a kid on Christmas can change everything. It can even define the next 20 years of your life. You'll give up on love, friendship, and any sort of warmth available in this world. You'll blame your cold heart on the past. And you may be right, but the terrible secret of this life is that the future is all on you. Oh, and this movie also has Muppets. This is a Muppet Christmas Carol.
I was waiting for something. I was like, this is a little drab for Muppet Christmas Carol.
Kind of what I love about this movie is that it is able to do both really well. It's able to be a great Muppets movie and have that kind of sense of humor and joy and delight, while also committing to how drab a Christmas Carol can be.
Yeah, it commits to the dark themes, to commit to the story and its message that it's trying to tell. Because if it nerfed that, then the story wouldn't be the same for kids to process if it was only funny.
Yeah, like Michael Caine is genuinely in a stage play when he performs.
Oh,
in this movie.
yeah. He's in a Shakespeare play when he reads it.
It's amazing. We'll talk more about it. Let's just introduce the show right away. Welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever you listen to our podcast, know that you can also watch us at Movies That Changed Us. I know I flunked.
All right, Spodcast? What's a Spodcast?
It's this new form of a podcast.
Spodcast. Spudcast. It's a potato podcast.
But Chris, if people want more of us and maybe want to watch movies with us, where can they do that?
I don't know. No, for those who like the show, feel free to support us on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/movies that changed us, where you can get weekly commentary tracks where you can watch movies with us, hear us talk over movies and hang out. And you also get early access and ad-free podcasts.
Yeah.
And bonus podcasts now too, monthly.
So by the time this episode comes out, we'll have done a commentary track on National Lampoon Christmas Vacation.
I think so. Yeah.
So it's the only Christmas commentary track we're doing. We thought it'd be fit to do that. We've done a reaction in the past to that movie, and I watched it again last Christmas. I think it's going to be a yearly watch for me.
Sure. It's just a required viewing now.
So come hang with us and celebrate your Christmas with us if you want.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I'm going to ask you right away, how did A Muppet Christmas Carol change you?
Well, I think we'll talk about this momentarily, but you and I are both pretty new to Muppet Christmas Carol specifically. I think we probably first watched it like 4 years ago or so, somewhere around there. But A Christmas Carol is a story I've been around since I was probably 12 when I first saw it. And it's still very moving to me. I mean, it's like kind of like what we did with It's a Wonderful Life, where it's a really moving story. And when you get older, it moves you arguably much more as life goes by and you start reflecting on an actual past. You know what I mean? Like the past, present, and future actually mean something to you at a certain age.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think it's very deep and profound how, it explores, contextualizing how people become bitter and how, people often who are bitter are hurt on the inside. But then also on the flip side, that it's not too late to change, and also making you realize how your actions can genuinely affect others too.
Yeah, taking accountability. Same thing as you, where you and I watched A Muppet Christmas Carol for the first time together 4 years ago when this was before we were doing reactions regularly too. But a YouTube movie friend of ours invited us on his live stream to do a watch along of Muppet Christmas Carol. His name is Distract. I don't think he makes videos as much anymore, but he's on Letterboxd if you guys want to check him out.
Yeah.
And we loved the movie immediately. But like yourself, like I've been with Christmas Carol as far back as I can remember. In fact, Christmas Carol was like the first adult stage theater production I'd seen. Before that, I'd seen a lot of school plays. And I remember for a field trip, our teacher took us to a live production of Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And it was the first time because I was seeing a professional stage play, just because it was like, and I remember when the Ghost of Christmas Past or Future would come in and they had real production value and smoke. And I was blown away that you could do that in theater because I was so young.
Like roughly how young were you at this point?
Probably like 10 or 12 or whatever.
Okay. Cool.
And I didn't grow up with theater in that way. I wasn't in New York, you know what I mean? So I wasn't like seeing Broadway plays when I was a kid. And so it really blew my mind. We had read the story in class, and I had even seen the Zemeckis Jim Carrey version.
And
I also feel like because of Grinch, I've consumed Christmas Carol in that way as well, because Christmas Carol and Grinch are like cousins, basically.
Yeah, they have similarities for sure. Yeah.
So much of like Christmas stories are based off of this story, right? This timeless classic of realizing what Christmas is really about. So I think Muppet Christmas Carol didn't really change me, but Christmas Carol the story really changed me, and I'm excited to do this episode because it was voted by our patrons.
Yes.
Which, if you're part of the $1 tier on our Patreon, you can vote on what podcast we do once a month. We'll put up a poll for you to decide.
Yeah.
And they voted on this one, and
You had to do a coin flip, actually.
yeah, because it was tied between this and Home Alone. And I think like this was an excuse for us to talk about our relationship with Christmas Carol and also rewatch Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Watching this movie last night, what a fucking joy.
Yeah.
What an absolute delight.
I know. It hit like we just touched on in the beginning of this, that it hits that perfect blend of being joyous and funny. Still funny. I think Muppets always has such like a casual, humorous tone with the way they do it. They never feel like they're treating the audience like they're stupid or anything.
No.
Because like some kids can, or kid movies and kid shows can do that where they make their jokes too childish and silly.
Well, I think I was going to ask you what's your relationship with the Muppets?
Not much of one. I do love Muppets every time I see them, but I never really grew up like heavily watching it. That and Sesame Street, honestly. I probably saw Sesame Street more, but when it comes to Muppets though, it's a little foggy in my memory.
I grew up with Sesame Street way more than the Muppets. I did watch a lot of Sesame Street. But yeah, Muppets, same thing. Whenever I see them, I enjoy them. I've seen the Jason Segel Muppet movie.
Yeah.
But I think like I don't want to disappoint people who are big Muppet fans, because the Muppet fans are like hardcore fans.
Yeah,
They know the lore and it's pretty intense. So but always love them. And I think like after this movie, I definitely have this urge to like go back and visit the classics with what Jim Henson did and everything.
Sure.
Because this was the first Muppet movie that was without Jim Henson. Like it was after his death.
Yeah. It opens with a tribute to him.
Yeah, it was Brian Henson who directed it. I think whenever I see the Muppets, what I love about them is like not only are they really funny, and the puppetry is like basically like magic to me. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Well, you immerse yourself in them like immediately.
But on top of all of that, they're always so sincere, which is what I love about them. Like Kermit the Frog is genuinely one of the most like optimistic people to ever exist.
I know, and it doesn't feel forced.
No,
his personality
it feels
seems
very
so
genuine.
Exactly, like he's such like a laid back dude. And oh, hey, how you doing? He's so mellow, and that's what people love about him.
It's this comforting sense. Like when he opens his mouth and starts talking, you hear that voice. You're like, oh, I just want him to talk all the time.
Exactly, I know. Kind of all of them have that appeal, and so I like the setup of having like, it's set up like the stage play. I too have seen the stage play when I was probably about 12. That was my first exposure to the story of A Christmas Carol, was through the play.
Interesting. So we had read the book. We had read the story in school.
Yeah.
The novella. And then our teacher took us to the play.
As like a reward at the end of it kind of thing.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's cool. Because I went not for school, but because when I was really young, I was really into acting. I used to go to like acting summer camps and theater stuff.
Yeah, you were a theater kid.
I was a theater kid growing up. And so my acting teacher was playing Scrooge, which was kind of cool.
That's really fun.
And someone else who was like one of the TAs or assistants, one of the older people that were there played as young Scrooge. So it was cool though, seeing like my teacher actually act, and and the same deal. It swept me away as soon as the story kicked in and I was fully immersed in it.
Yeah, it's one of those perfect timeless stories that are both for kids and adults. Mm-hmm. And but as a kid, it has that quality that not a lot of kid stuff has nowadays, which is like it can also scare you. It can also hit you in a very dark way that maybe you're not fully processing it. Because when I was younger and I saw the stage version of it, and the Ghost of Christmas Future comes out and it looks like a fucking Dementor.
Oh, yeah, it comes out this slow, grim Reaper that doesn't speak.
I remember as a kid, I was scared.
Yeah.
And I think I have this feeling that sometimes it's important for kids to be scared. Like, I think I'm not in this mindset that, like, kids stuff always has to be very safe and secure. Mm-hmm. Like, it's okay if kids' stories have some dark elements in there, too, because you get to learn a little bit about what life is like.
Well, yeah, there's a tasteful way to do it. You don't want to make stuff that scares kids for your own personal thrill, right? Like, I'm going to scare kids and it'll be funny. You want to make stuff that can, like, have a point to it so kids can actually take something seriously and really feel something. Like if you think of like the very first Harry Potter movie, you know, it deals with some dark shit in the first one. You know, his parents were murdered by a mysterious undead dark sorcerer, and his head is on the back of some, you know what I'm saying? There's some like dark stuff in there, but you know, we were moved and swept away by it because, you know, we were like, oh, this is a real threat that Harry Potter's facing.
Willy Wonka goes from pure imagination, one of the most delightful imaginative songs, to this boat scene that is like a fever dream.
Yeah.
And that could really creep you out as a kid, as you get older and that sticks with you, it hits you in a different way.
Exactly. So, and I even like how in this movie, how when, you know, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, is that what it was called? Mm-hmm. I always just call him Ghost of Christmas Future, but I know that's not the actual name.
Yeah, I always call it Future as well.
But I like how the narrators kind of just ditch you. They're like, oh, this is a little scary. We're getting out of here. So I imagine as like a kid, like what the narrators were like the most comforting part of this.
You don't have the safety of the narrators.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially it's brave to do that in a Muppet Christmas Carol.
I know.
Because you think like, okay, this is the Muppet Christmas Carol. They're going to be there the entire time. Yeah. And that's what I mean by this. This movie does commit to the Dickens story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And we see, you know, Kermit, who plays, you know, Mr. Cratchit or Cratchit.
Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, Bob Cratchit. Sorry, I'll say that one more time. And
you don't have to repeat it. It's fine. It's okay.
I just thought it'd be cleaner.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get to see Kermit the Frog like grieve his child.
Oh, well, that we'll get to it. That moment is devastating when you see the. I think the moment that's a bit too much in a good way for me.
Yeah,
is when the camera goes to the chair or the hat.
Yeah,
I can't fucking deal with it.
I know,
that's
you hear
a lot.
all of them silently, like just weeping.
And then let's just talk about it now, I guess. But like Scrooge is looking at the future. Tiny Tim didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
And their Miss Piggy and the daughters are like, Dad walks a little slower now.
Yeah.
And when he comes home, we initially saw him coming home in the beginning when Tiny Tim was alive. The family just straight up like tackles him.
Yeah, they're all like waiting for him right there.
And this time they're like, it's a slow comforting. I was like, oh, hello, you know, devastating, like really devastating. So I really appreciate that as an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. Watching it again, you know, same deal. I was like genuinely moved by it. So,
but then it also has like, I think there's some great songs in this movie. I gotta say,
which ones are your favorites? Because honestly, like for me, I don't have a problem with the songs, and I think it's because I don't have the nostalgia attached, so I'm going to respect it, you know. But I forgot the songs as soon as they were over.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit. That's me. Again, I'm sorry if that upsets people. You know, I understand if you grow up with it and that's your thing. I'm not saying it's bad and it's just nostalgia that you like it. I'm just sharing my experience with it.
No. I think that's okay. I like, you know, you didn't grow up with it. You don't have the nostalgia like people do, like you said. I didn't grow up either with it, but I did really have a great time with all the songs.
Yeah, they were fun.
But
especially when Scrooge is dancing.
We love that. But the two songs that I really got me was three. Let me give you three. Marley and Marley is one of the funniest songs.
Yeah.
Just like Marley and Marley. Ooh.
Yeah, that one's great.
But it's a little dance that they do. Like the left Marley, he has this like old man way of dancing where he's just like kind of thrusting his hips a little bit. It's really good. And I love Kermit's first song, like Bob Cratchit's first song, talking about like One More Sleep Till Christmas.
Yeah.
That one's so
that's a fun one.
It's so beautiful too. Like when he comes out of the store, like when they let him go home, he's able to convince Scrooge to get Christmas off, and then he walks out with all the other rats and everything.
Starts ice skating and all that.
But he has a little hat and scarf, and he's just singing. He starts ice skating. There's that wide shot of him skating. It's amazing puppetry work with like a very wholesome Christmas song, and it ends with the shooting star.
Yeah.
And then the third song I really like is Scrooge's song when he's wishing everyone Merry Christmas, and it's a Thankful Heart.
Yeah, at the very end.
Thankful Heart is actually like I think a really catchy song, and I could actually just listen to it by itself.
Sure.
And there's also something really cathartic about Michael Caine doing it.
Oh, well, yeah, it's such a nice payoff. It's almost like a reward for the audience to see him start singing because everyone else has been singing and having fun. Then now he's like in with the world and taking, you know, he's participating in his community.
And if you really listen to the lyrics too,
yeah,
it's very much about just like, I'm never going to take anything for granted again.
Oh, yeah. There's like lyrics in there. I'm probably butchering it, but he says something along the lines of like, you can measure a man's worth by the amount of friends he has.
Which is the It's a Wonderful Life message of
Yeah.
Clarence is like, no man is poor.
Yeah, no man is a failure who has friends.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And then, yeah.
Good shit.
Well, so what's interesting about it is that reading about Christmas Carol, and when I say reading, like always, it's a Wikipedia search, but found out that It's a Wonderful Life, the book that the movie is based on, was actually inspired by Christmas Carol.
Which makes sense. It's like almost like an inverse.
Like if Mr. Potter was the lead.
Exactly. That's totally what it is.
It's like if Mr. Potter was visited by those spirits, you know what I mean? That's basically what it is. So yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. They're distant cousins.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Caine, such good casting too. I mean, what was the first? Okay, so for Michael Caine, what was the first thing you've seen Michael Caine in?
Batman.
Batman. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's. I mean, yeah, hell yeah.
Right, for you? Was that the same?
No, it was not. It was Nigel Powers, Austin Powers, and Goldmember.
You know what? That could have been. For
Was it
me
yours too?
I just forget about it because I watched Goldmember as a kid.
Yeah.
But I never really rewatched it.
There's two things I really hate. What was it, like people who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch.
God, I just love that you can't stop giggling when you mention Austin Powers.
I know, dude. Well, I mean, especially like in contrast to this performance as Ebenezer Scrooge, knowing you played Austin Powers' dad.
You know what I really want to do is I want to go back and watch younger performances of Michael Caine. Because have you seen those photos of hot young Michael Caine?
Oh, yeah.
Like cigar smoking turtleneck Michael Caine. It's like, you and I know him as like the teddy bear Alfred.
Yeah, the wholesome old man.
But he was a dime piece. You know what I mean? Like he was out there.
I know.
Have you heard that story of how he found his wife?
No.
Apparently he saw his wife in a TV commercial and immediately was like, I need to marry this woman. And so he tried to find her. He traveled to where he thought she was, tried to find her, and some guy introduced her to him. And they ended up falling in love and getting married. But it was literally him being like, it was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen.
Oh, damn, that's awesome.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And they've been married since. They're like married for years. It's like a perfect story.
Damn, I know. Because now he's like in his 90s too.
Yeah, and he's last
retired
year.
and everything,
Last
right?
year was his final film role.
Yeah.
And I remember they brought him out in the red carpet on like a wheelchair. Like he is like in his 90s. He's really
let the man rest, But I just want to jump in. I saw like a brief little clip from like a BTS kind of promo for this movie. And he talked about why he played Ebenezer Scrooge so straight, basically, because he was saying like he thinks because the Muppets are already so silly and funny that if I shouldn't try to compete with them in terms of comedy. Like if I did it more realistic, it elevates their comedy more.
And that's so true.
It's so true, and it's such good actor shit, is what I was just gonna say. Like it reminds me of like the Jeff Daniels thing when he played
Chris,
as
I was
Harry.
about to mention it. I was just about to mention that.
Like I'm gonna say this before you.
So, say it for the people who don't know.
Yeah, that like Jeff Daniels did the same thing for those who don't know for Dumb and Dumber when he played as Harry. What's his last name in Dumb and Dumber? Harry
Lloyd. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Lloyd Christmas and Harry something. But commenters let us know. But basically though, Jeff Daniels did a more complimentary performance to let Jim Carrey be more wacky. And so it's like you can tell like that's the difference between like.
Well, I think to clarify a little bit, because they're both wacky, I think what Jim Carrey was saying though is that like he didn't want a comedian for that role. He wanted an actor.
Yeah.
Because he knew the comedian would try to upstage him and just try to be better than him. And he was the one who was like, let's look for an actor that will be committed to the role that's on the paper.
Which is exactly what Michael Caine does for this one, for sure.
Exactly. I mean, he like the moment he is introduced in that silhouette and he walks in
with this Dutch angle.
Yeah, and there's like the whole song's about how horrible this person is. Like it's like he's walking through the town and everyone's like, yeah, this guy fucking sucks. Like,
I know.
Like imagine if you're that bad of a person that you're just walking through town, people are singing a song about how much you suck. And then he turns around in the movie star introduction and he's like, humbug.
Cruella de Vil has that too. Like her villain song in 101 Dalmatians is other people singing about her. Like I don't think she has a song where she sings. It's just like Cruella de Vil. Everyone just talks about how horrible she is.
Well, I remember like watching this movie last night, and there's something interesting about like when he arrives and he's walking through the town. Something I noticed was that like how much of this movie still kind of feels like a stage play. Like it's shot in that way too, where like you can kind of sense that this is all a set.
Yeah.
Like it's not trying to make any effort to feel real. It feels like a Dickens novel come to life, and it feels like we're watching this on stage.
It's very stylistic.
Which is something I really appreciate, because I'm like it's because of the Henson and the family, and Frank Oz produced it. Like they all know that kind of like this, what kind of vibe to bring when you're filming this kind of movie, that it needs to have this like old school artificial sense to it.
Oh yeah, and it only elevates too. Like I remember when they get to the future, you can see the background, all the houses are like slanted, like it looks like a German expressionist, like Dr. Caligari kind of thing.
Exactly, right? And I think there's something about that choice that I feel like just wouldn't happen now. I feel like it would look very digital, and it just wouldn't have that texture to it that this movie does.
Oh, if this movie was made nowadays, it would have come out on like Disney Plus, and it would have been very okay. I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And
I know.
I definitely agree. It gives it like a timeless kind of like capsule nature to it, if that makes any sense.
And the winter aspect of it too, like I feel how cold it is there.
Yeah.
Which is something that's important. Does that make sense?
Oh
like,
yeah, 100%.
I like when the shot that I think about is like when Kermit like does the song, right? Where he's like, one more sleep till Christmas, and the song ends as him looking to a shooting star, and then he walks away. The camera pans down to one of the homeless Muppets like fucking freezing.
Yeah, well, and they mention it throughout too, where like they say when they go to his factory or whatever, how they say like I think it's colder in here than it is out there. There's like consistent reminders of the fact that it's cold out, and it just adds to the atmosphere and kind of this. It feels like a world that needs kindness.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
needs that warmth.
Like it adds to it emotionally. It's not just like an immersive kind of surface level. Like it's cold in winter, like no shit, but it definitely adds to the mood and emotion.
Totally. We go to Bob Cratchit and his family's home, and there is this like fucking pulverizing shot of like Kermit and Tiny Tim on the shoulder, and they're dancing in a wide, where I look at that and I'm like, that is just like masterwork in puppetry.
Yeah,
we're seeing
dude.
just think about this. We're seeing a wide shot. Like it's not,
full body of them, riding a bike.
and that's puppetry.
I know, dude. Well, Muppets just has that on lock where it hits that perfect balance where it's like, obviously puppets, they're not trying to, make, it's not like latex or some weird shit like that, but you just immediately forget that they're puppets when you see them. It's like a combination of the voice work, the way the faces crinkle a little and the eyes widen. They're just they have the emotions of the characters so on lock. And so those little moments when you feel like it's a wide, I like forgot. Like I remember that shot, but I didn't feel that like, oh my God, they pulled it up, because I was like, oh, it's just Kermit on a bike.
And I think because you and I are both not as familiar with Muppets, for you and I, when we see them act against like someone like Michael Caine, the fact that it's not jarring and it works so smoothly is kind of a miracle.
Exactly. Like the fact that the illusion works so well on me says a lot.
But there's still so much physical comedy in there. Like, but I know I was talking about the Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog scene just now, but to go back a little bit, when we're at Scrooge's office, every time Scrooge turns around, all the little workers are just moving their feathers rapidly. Like all that kind of stuff works so well. And then he's like, all right, we got to look at these eviction notices. And Kermit the Frog gives it to the rats, and they're all like moving back. Whoa!
Yeah, and the background is like, it's so heavy.
But anyways, we go to the house, and this is what I mean by the fact that this movie commits so hard. The fact that Tiny Tim is like coughing, and there's that moment where he's just like, well, yeah, he wanted all the other people to see him there on Christmas, that even like on Christmas Day, someone is crippled can still be walking amongst them.
Yeah.
What a devastating sequence.
I know.
You know?
Well, and there's a lot of dialogue throughout that's like word for word. I don't know if it's from the book. I'm assuming from the book, but also from the stage play, because my girlfriend watched like the first half with me, and then she went to bed. But during that first half, she was speaking the lines along with the movie. Exactly.
You could even tell too.
Yeah. I feel like that's how you got to do Christmas Carol. There are certain lines that are just like, I remember, like the surplus population. Like there's certain lines that just stick with me that are in every single adaptation of Christmas Carol.
That line about the surplus population, like I immediately had nostalgia when I heard it, because I'm like, I remember that so hard. Like even more than Bah Humbug. Like when I heard the surplus population line, I just remember that from the stage version, from the book, but also it is one of the most evil things you could say.
It's so horrible, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like such a horrible thing to say. And it's like, it has this kind of Bill Murray energy where you kind of laugh at it because it's like that's such a terrible thing. So you nervously are like, you know what I'm saying? It's like a humorous
it's
line.
like when he in Groundhog Day, the way Bill Murray's like such an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Like I consider Groundhog Day to be like a non-Christmas Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
Because and I was actually going to ask out of curiosity, if you don't mind me bringing this up,
Sure.
like in the sense of, because this one thing that I've noticed about common threads in Christmas movies is people love redemption, and even just overall in movies in general, people fucking love redemption. You know, people love people with damaged past that turn to good.
because it's a hopeful trope.
Yeah.
You want to believe that's possible.
That's the thing. I was going to ask like what you think it is about something like this that's so timeless in particular too.
Because it is, you want to believe that if someone is shown the consequences of their actions, that they will they will do the good thing after.
Like inside, people do have like an instinct to protect and to be kind, but a lot of people close that part of themselves off.
Yeah, and it's also like, there is sometimes can be a mirror for yourself that you can kind of be like, life is short, and after I leave, what kind of impact do I want on people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the same thing what It's a Wonderful Life does is that it kind of makes you think a little bit about like, after I'm gone, it's not just about you. Sure, like when he sees the future and how people just want all his stuff and they don't even care about him and they're so happy he's gone. Outside of that, the way he sees Tiny Tim's gone because of him. Like your actions affect people outside of you.
In probably more profound ways than you might think. I mean, like I think it was the present, part of the story that got me the most watching it again, because I think there's something about him seeing the Cratchits, like, and also not even knowing about Tiny Tim or anything like that, and then learning Tiny Tim's story, that like it kind of makes you reflect on your own actions, like you said, where you realize like, oh, I might have said this like snarky thing to someone or like whatever, gotten an argument and insulted them and some sort of thing. They might be suffering at home in a way that you don't fully know or understand. And everyone has their shit, right? And so, yeah, I think it does make you realize it in, the fact that in the present that he didn't know anything about his family, that he hasn't, like you said, an actual impact on him.
Yeah, this person has a life.
Yeah.
I think that's
really what it is. Everyone has lives, real lives with stuff and baggage and, people they love.
Ghost of Christmas Present is also my favorite.
Yeah, of course it is.
I was talking to you on the phone. It's like he's basically Hagrid in this movie. He shows up and he's just like, you just want to hug him immediately, want to hang out with him all day. But also I love his role where he's just like, I don't want to see this anymore. Take me somewhere else. And he's basically puts his arm around him. He's like, there's some worse shit out there. Let me show you. Like, people hate you, man. Like, let's go. But yeah, there's that feeling throughout where he's just like, he's so joyous, but he's also showing Scrooge like how everyone hates him, which kind of makes it funnier, but also like it's really affecting him, which is like the first time in the whole movie where you're seeing him just being like, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it was also that, what was it? It was like a game of charades, was it? No, it wasn't charades. What was the game that they were playing?
Like yes or no or questions.
Oh, it was 20 questions. They were playing 20 questions.
Yeah,
They're like an animal, a mineral, or this. And yeah, then by the time they get to the Ebenezer Scrooge answer, you can see Michael Caine's face just drop, like he's so hurt by that, realizing, because he's like kind of almost excited for people, like seeing them hang out because he's been so lonely. So he sees like an actual gathering.
And he also just doesn't know what people do for Christmas. Like, do they play games on Christmas?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like weirdly sad to see that this guy has no connection to society.
When he was in the past, the moment that I really wanted to dive deep into emotionally with you is we see Scrooge in class, no one talks to him, or he's like a lonely kid, and he hides his loneliness with like the sense of like, I don't need people.
He buries himself in work, essentially.
Yeah, which became kind of the motive for his entire life. He just like, he doesn't know how to connect with people. He has trouble connecting, so he buries himself with work. And then you see that and you're like, oh, that's kind of what was the start, and that's kind of what defined him. In my synopsis, the reason I talk about like how being lonely can really, as a young kid, can really define who you are. Scrooge looks at that point of his life, well, yeah, that's why I hate people. And I think a thing that this movie tackles is that sometimes, even as valid as our past trauma can be, there's this inkling that we have of relying on that to justify our actions. And I think what Christmas Carol does and what this movie does, what the story does, is kind of showing that, like, yes, We are products of the environment, and unfortunate things can happen to us in the past that can define who we are. But the future is still on us.
Mm-hmm.
We still need to be accountable for our actions. How do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah. I think it's incredibly true. I mean, I remember when I was going to therapy that one of the things that I remember I was kind of surprised by, because I was new to therapy at the time, is, he wasn't that interested in my past. And a common cliche, at least from what I've heard, is people exploring you're this way because you didn't get enough attention from your dad. Or,
Dr.
random shit
Melfi
like that.
telling Tony it's all his mom.
Yeah, exactly. So, and for the record, I did get enough attention from my dad. But but with that being said, my therapist wasn't that interested. He basically said, either way, these are, think of he was like, you're a movie guy, right? So think of your life like a story. You had your act one and, you're building your way up to it. Now you're in charge of your own act two, basically.
Yeah.
What you do with all the pieces that you have is up to you still. And so, I think that's what's important about the Ghost of Christmas Present, though. Like you said, it's like it contextualizes it for Scrooge for his past to make you feel not sorry for him, but to empathize with him and to kind of understand him a little bit better, that he is a person. And this is a side note, but I even like how he's in his pajamas virtually the whole time, because it just adds like a humorous vulnerability to him.
Yeah, he doesn't have that security of behind a desk or just like...
in his work clothes. He's just like a normal guy who is trying to sleep.
He can't throw money at people. He just has to reckon with his life.
Exactly.
Yeah, so how I'm like very much against trauma porn in movies nowadays. Like I talk to you about this off mic all the time, how like every horror movie deals with this character having trauma and that's where this monster came from. Or so many movies nowadays like do that. Now, I think what I've always told you is that I'm not against people exploring trauma through cinema. Like that's okay. People have been doing that for years. Sometimes I feel like it's an easy route for horror movies to just be like, oh, it's because of a relationship with her mom. That's why this monster's here, And that can be annoying to me sometimes because it just feels like a crutch.
Yeah.
But also, I think like the way this movie deals with it, I find very interesting. Even though it's such a classic old story, but it hit me in a new way where I'm like, yeah, no, see, that's the thing that I think gets lost sometimes is that even if something horrible happened to our past that like really affected who we are, we're still responsible for who we are.
Yeah.
That doesn't change the responsibility that we have, and we need to take accountability for that.
Yeah, they both go hand in hand, right? I think some people need to look at their past in order to forgive themselves sometimes, for their present, if they're behaving in a certain way that they don't like or regret, or they have certain patterns of behavior that they are not proud of and want to fix. Sometimes it does take looking at your past to kind of come to terms with it and realize like, oh, I'm this way because of this and that's not my fault, but you got to take that and then move forward with it, after the fact. You can't just hide behind that.
Yeah, which is what happens to Scrooge is like when he realizes the lack of an impact that he's left on people when he's gone, which is kind of the opposite of the George Bailey thing if It's a Wonderful Life, right? It's like if Mr. Potter was George Bailey and like it's kind of going through that, he realizes that like, oh, I gotta like, no matter what I went through, I gotta change who I am and how I treat people.
Yeah, and even if it's a cycle of behavior, you can break that cycle. And you even he has like his, long lost love too. As part of it, that's a big part where, he drowned himself in work and that he was too cynical, essentially. And he was like, oh, we can't afford this because, life kept happening and he just, missed his chance. He didn't prioritize her like he should have. And he has to live with those regrets, essentially. Yeah. And it made him bitter,
It's like if he never saw his Mary. I keep connecting to It's a Wonderful Life only because by the time this episode comes out, you guys would have, like, It's a Wonderful Life has been out for 2 weeks. I just finished editing that podcast. So it's very much in my head. And it's like a really weird thing to just watch this movie right after I finished editing it.
Yeah. They're both, I think I consider this movie also like another cousin,
Yeah, totally. I have a question for you.
Okay.
A movie is a lot about holiday cynicism, as a lot of, like you said, Christmas movies kind of are, where it's like someone that's like, whatever. Everyone's kind of a Scrooge in the beginning and then becomes a teddy bear at the end. What snaps you out of holiday cynicism? What gets you into that mode again of like, oh, right, it is Christmas.
Yeah.
Like what reminds you that Christmas can actually be a wonderful thing?
Well, I don't think anything can snap me out of it as much as I wish it could. I think the most comforting thing to me is just leaning to people for support and being vulnerable. That's something I have trouble with is I like, for me personally, I try to like kind of bury myself away where I try to make it seem like I'm doing fine. No one bother me. I'm doing fine because I don't want to bother people with my shit,
Yeah.
and so I think what I'm working on though is being more open and just being like, you know what, this has been really fucking hard lately. And sometimes just coming to terms with that and accepting that, just knowing, okay, you know what, this has been a hard fucking week or past couple weeks, month, 2 months, whatever it is. It's okay to just look that in the eye, you know?
Totally. I think that's what sorry,
Our hands touched a little for listeners.
Yeah. That's
Sorry, I feel closer to you though.
me too. That's what Bob and Emily Cratchit have, played wonderfully by Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy, is that like when there's that feeling that you get of like when Bob Cratchit comes home to his family, as poor as they are, and they have this really sick kid, there's that feeling of like they can talk to each other about their tough day.
Exactly.
And that's sometimes in holidays especially, that's kind of all you want.
Yeah.
You want someone that you can talk to about your really tough month or like week, I'll share this story.
Yeah.
Last week, I was really going through a super tough time. And I had that breaking point where I remember like you and I got into an argument, and after the argument was over, we had resolved something, and you were like, "Hey man, is there anything else I need to know about?" And I kind of just like basically I burst into tears on the phone with you. And it was weird because I was just like in a very public grocery plaza with a bunch of people doing their shopping for holidays while I was on the bench crying. And it was like a very it felt like cinematic almost, where like, oh, people are like joyous and celebrate the holidays. And I'm here
powerful
on the phone.
Juxtaposition.
I know. It felt like a movie.
Who was directing that scene?
I don't know. But anyways, I remember, I think like all you said was like, I know it's really tough right now. Trust me, I get it. And I think I was just going through seasonal depression.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time sometimes admitting that I can be very open, and when I need help, I'm good about asking for help. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to saying the word that I'm depressed, I have a hard time doing that because I always want to feel like, oh, I don't have it that bad.
Yeah, you tend to cushion it whenever, like, sometimes you'll like hint at it, you'll be like, yeah, I'm not going to say that I have like a mental illness, but I think that, you'll kind of, not in like a bad way, but sometimes you like you said, you do try to cushion it. Like you can't be honest with yourself about it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember you telling me on the phone, you're like, listen, I go through that. I've been through that. I just know I'm here for you. And I love you, and I'm here for you. I remember you saying that to me. Now, obviously, that is a very just nice thing to say that you would say to any friend, but also just like it meant something that you were just there to listen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I said, I think tying it back to this movie with like Scrooge when he's looking at these families gathering, it's not just about the fact that these people are hanging out and I have no friends. It's more about just like, man, I go through a tough time too, but I have no one to talk to about that. Like, he has his lost love.
Yeah.
He's had a tough life, and he can't talk about that with anyone because he's just alone in this empty house eating a meal by the fireplace by himself.
Yeah, and he burned bridges with virtually everyone else too. He insults everyone and puts them down and makes them feel ashamed of,
But it's easy to get into that because I felt myself, like when I got into that argument with you, mm-hmm. I felt kind of gross inside too. I'm just like, why am I even fighting with him so hard on this? Like, why am I? And I've also felt this like kind of to really open up. I think I've been struggling a lot financially this past month, and this is, I don't want to throw a pity party or anything like that, but it's just, during the holidays, we all kind of get into financial struggle, so it's just simple, right? But I remember this feeling I had where I started to feel straight up resentment towards people who made more money than me that were in my close circle.
Yeah. That
I didn't want to feel. That I was like, I hate feeling this way. I would catch myself just being like, oh, what are you complaining about? And, not to sound cliche and to put too fine a point on it, but I kind of felt like Scrooge, where anyone who would be happy around me, I fucking hated. And I started feeling that way. And it wasn't until that phone call with you where I kind of let it all out, where I was like, oh, yeah, I'm just deeply lonely and sad.
You're just tremendously unhappy. Yeah.
And that's what it is. And I didn't really feel immediately better after it, but that kind of resentment washed away.
Well, the goal, yeah, I'm sure it helped you heal. Is
Yes.
really what it was. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And I remember when you're on that call, I felt there was something underneath, like you said, like I felt, it's like, why is this such a thing? Like, why, like you're feeling something else.
The argument we had didn't call for something that was as dragged out as it became.
Yeah, and I can tell you were in pain and through something else. You know what I mean? And so. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was trying to keep my shit together on the phone with you too, but low key, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was kind of wiping off a little tears while I was on the phone with you because I was stressed on your behalf and I was worried. I wanted to make sure you were okay.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think, but the key is that like when I did have that call with you and I opened up, like I said, the resentment was washed away.
Yeah.
That kind of like ugly feeling
That
I had
bitterness.
inside did go away. And I think when I watched this movie, that's kind of what stood out to me is that like sometimes when you have close ones around you, the bitterness and cynicism you have around the world, it can help you heal. Because I think it's easy for all of us, especially nowadays in 2024, to be cynical about everything.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, in my earlier 20s, you and I have talked about this a lot, so this isn't going to be anything new for you, but for listeners, in my earlier 20s, I used to be a lot more cynical. I used to, back with my coworkers, I used to kind of pride myself on being like, I'm like the brutally honest, like funny asshole.
The edgy one. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to think of myself as that, like, oh, I'm going to say it how it is. And like, if you don't like it, I'm sorry, you can't handle it. I was like that type of little shithead. You know what I'm saying?
What made that change?
I think a combination of things. I think my girlfriend was a tremendous part of that. I think she always was able to see other things in me that I think other people didn't because I presented myself in other ways. I think I was told a lot throughout as a joke. Like, I think I told you about this, but like, oh yeah, this is Chris. He's an asshole, but he's also the nicest one here. Like I was told things like that where like people could tell I was probably a softie underneath, but I just had my walls up and it was like a defense mechanism for me. And so I think I talked it out a lot because, there are just certain things that I still live with that I don't like the way I talk to people or the way I think about it, and again, I was young, so I'm not going to dwell on it. I just got to move forward. It is easy, like you said, though, to like drown in it though, because it becomes but it's essentially a defense mechanism. Like I've been saying.
Yeah, it's the easiest thing to do is to hate everything and be cynical. That's not hard.
Yeah.
And because the world will give you many reasons too.
Yeah.
It's not like the world is filled with reasons for you to be optimistic. If you have people around you that love you and care about you and you allow yourself to be vulnerable to them, it can help you fight through the cynicism of this world.
And I also, just to add on, I also don't think it's entirely just people loving you, which helps, but also you loving people, which is a hard choice to make sometimes.
Yeah.
Because even, some people don't have people. Some people, like are Scrooges who just grow up and burn bridges with people and end up alone.
And I'll make another, to add on to that, again, the world will give you many reasons to hate people.
Yeah.
The amount of times people will casually be like, people suck.
Yeah.
And
I hate people.
And they say it as an edgy joke, and I get it. But sometimes once you say it enough, that kind of builds a tar inside your body.
A little bit.
You know what
100%.
I mean? Sometimes when you say that one thing enough, your mind will start to believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think even if people like I said earlier, like even if people who don't currently have people in their immediate lives who love them in a way that they need it, someone will. You know what I mean? I think someone will if you open yourself up to it and you do the loving too.
Yeah.
Cartoonish
as not cartoonish, but as mannered as Christmas Carol is as a story, where it feels very classical and old school. And Scrooge feels like just the Wicked Witch kind of villain, where it just feels so broad. You can still connect to it on an emotional level today.
Well, yeah, I think that's what's so cool about it is it starts off with him being such a clearly two-dimensional asshole.
I mean, he especially in this movie, Michael Caine comes in silhouetted and walking through on a Dutch angle.
I know, with his cane, and everyone's singing about how evil he is, and he's just being mean to everyone, right? He's just saying, no, I will not donate to the poor, even though I have money to,
Yeah, again, a surplus population line.
Exactly. So, but then, like we've been saying, it does deepen him, but it also helps him deepen his understanding of other people as well as himself, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to hop into the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come?
Yeah, Ghost of Christmas Yet. I mean, we talked a lot about it. I think, is there something specific that you wanted to discuss?
I guess I kind of want to inch our way to the scene when he sees his own grave, too.
Right.
Because that's a pretty gnarly scene.
And it's him. Yeah, it's him being like, "Oh my God, this is my legacy. This is the world I leave behind."
Yeah. Well, especially like his fear at that point too.
Yeah,
Like the way he keeps asking like that.
He's shaking.
Yeah, like the Grim Reaper, whatever, the ghost basically, saying like, okay, I've seen enough. Okay, I don't know what this is. I don't want to look at it. And it's like, it's interesting because on the surface level, he's saying, I've already changed. Like, you don't need to show me this. But the fact that he's not willing to look at that in the eyes and really come to terms with the harm he's done.
And the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, notably, is just pointing. He's not saying anything, which is in the story, in the classic stage play too, where it's like always brilliant to me. Even as a kid, I was like, that is smart. Where the only ghost that doesn't talk is the future, because that's the most ominous.
It's the most ominous, and it's even on like a deep emotional level too. It's like almost like, I don't need to say anything to you. You need to figure this out for yourself. We're at that point now. We're no longer walking you through, teaching you this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Rizzo the Rat and Charles Dickens are gone.
Yeah, you're on your own on this one.
Yeah.
You need to figure it out. You need to put the pieces together, like, fix the puzzle in your mind.
And he just keeps pointing to the tombstone. It's like, and also you need to look at it. Like, you can't hide away from it anymore. It's right there. And it's the message of that for me is what you're saying. Like, you need to confront the worst parts about yourself.
Yeah, and which is a scary thing. I empathize with that.
Of course,
no
it's
one
not
wants
easy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the truth is that like that's why it's so important, because people don't want to think about it, but for me, for example, something that like always freaked me out going back to when I was saying I used to be much more of an asshole when I was young, that like I think about sometimes like when people say something mean to me years ago that still sticks with me.
And you don't forget.
Like, and exactly, I'm like, did I do that to someone? Did I do that to people?
Isn't it haunting? Like,
know.
I think about that. That's a great point. I think about that all the time. There are like a handful of things that people have said to me like in 6th grade.
Yeah.
In passing that I remember.
Yeah, so it makes me think like,
and they're a great person. They're married and have kids now. Like, I know specifically who I'm talking about in my head. There's one person that specifically said something to me that wasn't even that harsh.
Yeah,
that wasn't even that bad. But I just remembered it.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, So like, and also on the flip side, like you never know what someone's going through if they're, have self-esteem problems already as it is at home and you don't know about it. And you just, you know what I'm saying? You were just blowing off steam and just said something shitty just to, because you didn't get along at work or whatever it is, you didn't get along at school. And so it is important to be mindful of that,
Some things that we didn't discuss in the Muppet related world is
the narrators.
The narrators are so funny. Every time it worked for me. Like every time they open the window, they fall. They're like, ah.
Oh, dude, that was my favorite. The window when they're like, are we safe up here? And they're like, yeah. He's already, he's good now. And then he just opens the door or the window and they fly off.
My favorite gag is that he gets frozen in the water and Charles Dickens has to unfreeze him.
Or when he sneaks through the gate when he's like, you can fit between the bars.
And then also there's that moment where he's like, I'm Rizzo the Rat and I'm Charles Dickens. And he's like, no, you're not. He's like, well, yes, I am. He's like, no, he's the great writer. And he's like, well, thank you.
I know. It does I know we're getting so deep, but this movie is so funny.
It really is. That's why I wanted to mention it.
Yeah.
I also have this feeling watching this movie. I'm like, why don't, maybe I'm not, this is not a popular opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's stage play versions of Christmas Carol every year. But in terms of movies, I feel like Christmas Carol should be like a TV movie, like a Showtime movie every year. We should get a new Christmas Carol every year. And it should have like, this is what it should be. Every time a big movie star or a big TV star gets to an age where they can play Scrooge, they need to do it. Like, that should be a requirement.
Bryan Cranston.
That's on my list.
Was that on your list?
I love
okay,
you.
Cool. That immediately jumps out.
So I have a couple on my list. Bryan Cranston's
you
on
wrote
it.
a list of people you want to play Scrooge?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Bryan Cranston's on them. I love that you mentioned him. But
Timothy Chalamet as Bob Cratchit. Or the nephew.
So like I want
like the kind nephew who like is super poor but he like gives to people.
In my opinion, to keep the movie cheap so they could make one every year.
You're thinking like a producer now.
The actor who plays Scrooge should be the biggest movie star.
Okay.
Right? Denzel Washington.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's kind of badass. I like that.
He could play menacing, but I want him to do menacing because Denzel Washington. There's a thing about him in Gladiator 2. He plays kind of the villain, but I'm also like, fuck yeah, it's Denzel, and I kind of want to see that that energy shifted into something more menacing,
be more sinister.
Exactly. Javier Bardem.
Oh yeah, dude, that's too scary. That's way too scary.
But you're thinking of him as Anton Chigurh, which I understand. But
Yeah.
I am also thinking of him.
Lyle Crocodile.
Yeah, there's a version of him where I can I want to see him in the hat. I want to see him do that, right?
Yeah.
Oh God, I love that you mentioned Lyle. You're the only other person that would mention him in
I haven't
Lyle.
even seen it.
God, I love you.
Isn't Shawn
okay.
Mendes Lyle?
Yeah, Shawn Mendes is. We all know that Shawn Mendes is Lyle Crocodile.
I don't know much more about it.
I don't know either. I have Harrison Ford.
Oh yeah, okay.
That might be too obvious, but I want to see him do it.
Sure. These are all not British, by the way.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's fine. Yeah, we'll bypass that part.
Yeah, I couldn't think of that many British.
Benedict Cumberbatch?
No.
What? You wouldn't want to see him play Scrooge?
He's not as old yet.
Okay. Bob Cratchit?
Maybe.
Okay.
Benedict Cumberbatch could be Scrooge. That might be a good call. He might actually be a good Scrooge. I could see him doing it. Okay, this is a fun one. James Gandolfini as Tony Soprano playing Scrooge.
Wait, so if Tony Soprano's church did a production?
Yeah, I wanted Sopranos to do a Christmas Carol episode.
I know. That'd be kind of rad. Yeah.
I'm watching Sopranos for the first time recently. I'm on season 3, and it's very exciting.
You're finishing up season 3.
And season 3 has a Christmas episode that's really fantastic, so that's what was on my mind.
Got it. Okay.
Last one, and I think you'll enjoy this, is Shah Rukh Khan as Scrooge.
Oh yeah, that'd be fucking rad. Are you kidding me?
Okay, cool. So, Benedict Cumberbatch is the one you recommended.
Off the top of my head, yeah. Him.
Do you have any other ones that you can just think of? Ray Fiennes?
Oh, dude, Ray Fiennes would be chilling.
Ray Fiennes could do good job as it.
Colin Farrell with a bunch of latex.
Well, now you just want to do Penguin.
Just Penguin, Colin Farrell.
Brendan Gleeson.
Oh yeah, dude, Brendan Gleeson.
You just want to see that.
I
want to see that tomorrow.
I feel okay. Let us know if any of these actors have already played him. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these actors played him in some straight to DVD or
Brendan
TV
Gleeson.
production.
I was like, oh, maybe he's done the stage.
They might have already done exactly. Some of these might have already played.
I could see Brendan Gleeson just being with a torch, with a lamp.
Jonathan Banks.
Yeah, Jonathan Banks could be really good. Okay, cool. So I think we have a good list, and if Hollywood wants to reach out to us, they can.
Idris Elba.
Yes.
He'd be a cool fucking Scrooge, though.
BBC, if you want to do a TV version
yeah, we have some ideas. Hit us up.
BBC, if you want to cast Shah Rukh Khan in your British Christmas Carol TV production, then let us know.
Let us know, and we'll just rattle off some ideas.
Yeah,
you get to pay us for it.
We'll be in the room just pitching ideas. Any final thoughts with this movie before we move on to our write-ins?
I mean, it's like we've been saying, man, this movie was a joy. I think I like doing this weekly podcast when it comes to certain holidays because I really get my fill. You know what I mean? I feel like I got to watch Jingle All the Way, Muppet Christmas Carol, and It's a Wonderful Life. And on my own, separately, I watch shitty Christmas rom-coms.
Yeah, we're really festive.
Yeah.
In a way that we might have not been. I feel that way too. Michael Caine dancing, we mentioned it briefly, but
singing and dancing too at the end.
There was something there was that moment with Ghost of Christmas Present when he starts really getting into it.
Yeah, man, that part, you just smile immediately, right? When he just does a little.
Yeah, it's so charming that it's alarming. Yeah. It's alarming how charming it is because you're just oh God.
Chalarming.
Yeah, and he's dancing with Ghost of Christmas Present. Ghost of Christmas Present brings out the dancing Scrooge. That's how awesome he is.
Yeah, I know, dude.
Okay, cool. So let's get to the write-ins. We asked you guys how this movie changed you, and you wrote to us at moviesthatchangedus@gmail.com. We only got one write-in this time, I will be honest. But it's from a loyal subscriber of ours, and he writes us in all the time, Daniel Walsh. You guys might have heard from him in the previous episodes, but I'll read him out.
Yeah. So thank you for reaching out to us.
All right, so from Daniel, hello once again, nice dudes. This is the same Dan for the 4th time, parentheses, I think it's the 4th time.
Yeah.
And similarly to Jingle All the Way, I have a different experience with this movie than most people, as I have also seen this very recently, and I haven't grown up with it over my 15 years of life. I first saw this film only this year around 2 weeks ago. Seeing as I am still in high school, wow, Daniel.
Yeah.
so much of our audience is older, so it is kind of funny. But seeing as I am still in high school, I've recently read the original story of A Christmas Carol last year, but the version I grew up with was the old Mickey Mouse version.
I forget about that one.
It's on Disney Plus. I remember seeing it last night. This was my first time seeing an actual feature-length adaptation of this classic story, although I did technically see Scrooged first, the Bill Murray one, but that is more of a spin-off where this one is a full adaptation. This version was extremely faithful in its dialogue, except for the songs. As for details, I love that Gonzo is the narrator and Charles Dickens himself. I think that's cute. I also think it's cute.
Yeah, agreed.
The Muppets world has always been very fun and charming, and that really shines in this flick. The performance of Michael Caine was incredible, and my favorite version of Ebenezer Scrooge. All throughout, there were a handful of pretty good laughs, both dialogue-driven and some fun slapstick. I've always felt something strong about the story of A Christmas Carol by itself, ever since seeing the Mickey version. But this one is definitely the best movie version that I've seen to date, and it changes me by inspiring me to be kind and to help those in need. In any way, which for me has recently been donating small amounts of charities and to the poor as well.
Oh, good for you. Good
Especially
for you, man.
in
You're
high
15.
school.
I was just saying 15. Hell yeah, that's a great thing to do.
I wasn't that generous in high school.
I know, right?
Until next time, nice dudes, happy holidays from Dan.
All right, listeners, be more like Dan. Start giving more.
And
If you can.
Thank you, Dan, for writing us in. And if you want to write us in the future and want to know what movie we're going to be doing, follow us on Instagram.
Yeah.
We always post a little thing that says the movie and where you can write us in.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing a special bonus podcast next week.
Yeah.
Won't reveal it
just
right
to wrap
now,
up the year.
But next Monday, there will be an episode, but it won't be like a Christmas episode. It'll just be like an end of the year wrap up episode.
Yeah.
Hope you guys are having a great holidays this year in general. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us as always. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.